It was 2014, and I was a senior in high school. At the time, I lived in Central Texas, but my brother was in school in Colorado. Since he was graduating soon, and I had not yet visited him, I decided to drive out to him when our spring breaks finally aligned. The only issue was that I technically was not supposed to be driving. Believe it or not, despite being a dumbass 18-year-old who liked to drive fast, I had never had a traffic violation, never even gotten a parking ticket. I did, unfortunately, get caught drinking with my buddies a week prior to the drive. My license was suspended for 30 days, but I didn't let that stop me. I was gonna see my brother one way or another, so I left late in the day, chugged Red Bulls to stay alert, and stuck to the back roads as much as possible. It added a few hours to my trip, but it allowed me to avoid state troopers for the most part. By midnight, I felt like I was in the Australian outback. I had taken road trips through my state before, but this particular route was something else. There was nothing but scrub brush and signs that were way too weather-beaten to read properly. I was so busy thinking about how utterly isolated I was that I almost missed the orange traffic cone in the middle of the road, placed square atop a yellow center line. I reduced my speed, but I did not stop. I was confident that there was no work being done on the road at the time. I had checked the maps prior to setting off, and there definitely would have been more signage to alert people. Since I knew there was no construction in the area, I found the placement of the cone a little odd. Of course, junk on the road is not such a rarity, but the way it aligned perfectly with the meridian line felt intentional. A few miles later, my drive was again interrupted. My high beams reached far into the night, providing enough visibility for me to see something else that was really odd. There was something else in the road, this time in my lane. I squinted. Another traffic cone? It was tall enough, but not quite thin enough. I slowed down a little more. I remember thinking, that can't possibly be a person. I got a little closer. Lo and behold, it was. I veered into the other lane, but the person in the road mirrored my car, clearly trying to get me to stop. They threw one of their arms out, as if welcoming the cold, metal embrace of my front bumper. I slammed on the brakes abruptly enough to give myself whiplash. Confusion and anger rose up in me as I turned my headlights down and got a better look at the person in front of me. I really regretted stopping once I could see the man more clearly. At first glance, he seemed like a normal guy. He was tall and middle-aged, clad in blue jeans and a long tan coat. He had no particularly distinct facial features, except for a set of blue eyes that somehow seemed too small for his face. He gave me a wide grin when he saw me stop. I guess he could have just been relieved, but I could not give him the benefit of the doubt due to what he was holding. Balled up in his hand was something small, furry, and bloody. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but it kinda looked like a dead rat. I had no idea why he would be holding such a thing, but that didn't really matter. All I knew was that there was something seriously wrong with this guy. A suspicion only exacerbated by the fact that he still had one of his hands behind his back. Was he hiding something? A weapon, maybe? I took my foot off the brake. I might have been dumb enough to stop, but at least I wasn't dumb enough to stay. As I tried to maneuver around him, the man again moved in front of my car, but when he saw I was not going to stop, he took a step back. As he did so, he let his arms fall into his sides, and I saw what he had been concealing behind his back. It was a large claw hammer. I sped off, not entirely believing what had just happened. There was a small chance that the guy genuinely needed help, but I sure was not going to stick around to figure that out. As I drove off, I looked in my rearview mirror. Before the darkness swallowed him, I saw the man starting to run after my car. For a second, the sight made me nervous, but then it just made me laugh. Did he actually think he was going to catch up to me? I watched him disappear from the view with a smile on my face. Fucking idiot, I said to myself. Now, here is the punchline. No sooner did the words leave my mouth than my car jolted forward with a sickening thud. I looked back at the road, but it was too late. There came several pops in quick succession, as loud as gunshots. My dashboard lit up like a switchboard, warnings blinking uselessly as my tires chewed themselves to pieces beneath me. The car started to drag left, the steering wheel fighting me as a low, flapping sound rose up from the wheels. When I stopped the car, I gave myself a moment to catch my breath, then threw the door open and hopped out. Using the flashlight I kept in the glove box, I assessed the damage. All 4 tires were shredded, strips of rubber curling off like dead skin. I just stood there for a second, light shaking in my hand, unable to believe how fast everything had happened. I angled the beam back down the road, sweeping over cracked asphalt and weeds. 50 meters back, half hidden in the dark, was a spike strip. I had not seen the damn thing at all. Between where I had encountered the man and where it hit the stinger, there was a slight hill. I couldn't see over the hill, could not see much of anything, but somehow I knew I was being pursued. The man with the hammer, who was probably the one behind the traffic cone and the spike trap, was making his way toward my car at that very moment. I had only put about a half a mile of distance between us, which meant I had maybe 5 minutes tops to figure out what to do. I checked my phone, and, as luck would have it, I had no reception. My first thought was to get back in the car and lock the doors, but what good would that do me against a hammer-wielding maniac? I could run out into the fields on either side of the road, but there was really nowhere to hide out there, and I was loath to isolate myself even further from help. My plan, if it could even be called that, was to run. First, I turned on my headlights to alert passing cars. Then, I grabbed my phone, wallet, keys, and flashlight out of the car and mentally prepared for a very long jog. Thankfully, I was a cross-country runner in high school, and I had good endurance. While I knew I could not run all the way to the next town, I knew that another car had to show up eventually. I would flag them down and ask for help, or at the very least, I will probably stumble into an area with reception and call the police. I shut and locked my poor, crippled car, then took a glance behind me. He was cresting the hill, less than a quarter mile out. Something about the bend in the road, coupled with the low lighting, made his long, looping stride seem unnatural. He seemed like he was floating. I was already freaked out, but seeing that made me feel like I was being chased by something not entirely of this world. I turned and ran. I fought the urge to sprint, knowing I could not afford to wear myself out right away. Once a minute, I glanced behind me. My flashlight beam was not powerful enough to reach him, but I could still see the faint silhouette of the man against the cloudless, starry sky. He was small on the horizon, but he was there nonetheless, and worse, he was gaining on me. 5 minutes turned to 10, and I could not believe that he had not given up already. I told myself he could not keep up the pace, and yet, every time I turned around, he was a little closer than before. At some point, I tried shouting out, tried asking what he wanted, but of course there was no answer. Soon, I was wiping sweat from my brow and thanking God that I had been wearing athletic shoes on my drive. As I looked over my shoulder for a routine check-in, I saw the shimmer of headlights. There was a pickup truck ambling toward me. I bolted straight into the middle of the road, waving my arms around and shouting for help. For a second, the truck slowed, but then it eased around me and kept right on going. No windows rolling down, no honk. The bastard did not even stop long enough to see what my deal was. I shouted something at the shrinking red taillights, but it did not matter. My salvation had left me in the dust. I stood there long enough to realize that standing still was a bad idea, and then I pushed down my rage in disbelief. I looked behind me once again, and strangely, that time, I did not see anyone. Maybe my pursuer had fallen behind finally, or maybe he had given up entirely. Or, hell, maybe I'd hallucinated the entire thing and abandoned my car in the middle of nowhere for no reason. In any case, I kept on moving, periodically checking my phone. I guess I was due for some luck that night, because after another half mile, I saw a car on the side of the road, a red Dodge Charger. It was turned off and dark inside, but the tires were perfectly intact. There was no visible damage on the car, certainly no evidence of hitting a stinger, and that fact made me wonder if it belonged to my pursuer. I made my way to the car. There was no person inside, but there were still keys in the ignition. Usually, this is where I end my story. Dodge ex machina to the rescue. I settled into the driver's seat and breathed an enormous sigh of relief when a turn of the keys brought the engine roaring to life. By some miracle, the car was drivable, and it had enough gas to take me to the next town. Finally confident that I would survive the ordeal, I looked out the passenger side window and saw something that made my heart stop. Yards away from my car and rapidly closing the distance was the man. He had not given up at all. He had merely started running in an arc through the fields, avoiding the road that I had watched so diligently and so uselessly. He had banked on me losing sight of him so that he could catch me off guard, and it had almost worked. By the time I slammed my foot on the gas, he practically had his fingers on the handle. I caught one last glimpse of him in the side mirror as the Charger tore off. It was a pale, grinning blur, closing in faster than should have been possible. After that, I drove the car straight to the police station in the next town. At dawn, when they took me back to recover my own vehicle, every single window had been shattered. Not simply cracked, but obliterated. Nothing had been stolen from my car, which somehow made everything worse. As far as I know, they never found the man with the hammer. Here is the part I generally omit from my little story. When I, exhausted and nearing my limit, finally made it to the Charger, the driver's side door was open. I clicked on my flashlight and swept the beam across the interior. The cabin was a wreck. Blood was smeared over the wheel, gearshift, and driver's seat, like some injured creature had been thrashing around. The windshield was cracked from the inside. From the open door trailed a dark streak through the gravel and weeds, a crushed path mottled with red where something heavy had been dragged. I let my beam follow the indentation until it caught on something still and misshapen. There was a man lying there on his back, some poor bastard who, most likely, had offered a ride to a downtrodden traveler. His mouth hung open as if he died while trying to speak. His skull had been bashed in. Part of it was just gone, leaving a cave above his eyes where something heavy had landed over and over again. The white of his skull shone moon-like underneath my light. That matted clump that I saw in the hitchhiker's hand was not roadkill. It was a whole goddamn scalp. Being me, about 9 years old, just moved to the countryside with my mom and her dude in a tiny cottage that is at least a century old. The upper floor was just 2 bedrooms. Mom usually sleeps on the couch downstairs and her dude in the guest house. Their relationship was more friendly. Sex life non-existent. .png. Got both rooms upstairs for myself. One became the main bedroom, and the second smaller one like a chill-out TV room. That smaller room was creepy as fuck. Tried sleeping in it a few times, but always got horrible nightmares. It had a tiny door in the wall from old times that led to some sort of escape crawl space in case the house would catch fire. Heard creepy shit from behind it, scratching/knocking. Most of it was probably rats, but some of the noises were just too loud and human-like. Basically abandoned that room completely and just kept to my main bedroom. Anyway, fast forward to a time where we repainted my bedroom. Of course, it did not happen over the span of one day, so I had to sleep somewhere else. Was very skeptical, but tried to man up and sleep in the TV room for once. Left the TV and light on when I went to sleep, because still half a pussy. Took a while, but somehow, the shadows and low volume from the TV were very soothing. Managed to fall asleep. Wake up next day, feeling refreshed. That wasn't too bad. Maybe all this spoopy crap was bullshit. Go downstairs. Mom was heating water on the wood-burning stove. Season 1, Episode 5. What are you doing? Oh, hey Anon. Didn't you notice the power went off last night, right after you went to bed? My face went, recalling the TV was in fact off when I woke up. Then what was the shadows and the whispers? Did not even open the door to that room unless I had to until I moved out. I worked the late night shift for a while as an EMT. I was on an ambulance that does both 911 calls and generic transport in Southern California. One night, my partner and I took a lady back home from the ER. She lived in a kind of sketchy neighborhood. We dropped her off and then drove a block away to finish up paperwork and clean our equipment. We were parked opposing traffic on a curb in the suburbs at 1 a.m. I had just finished cleaning, and I was standing at the passenger side with the door open. My partner was seated in the passenger seat, still finishing her report. All of a sudden, we heard a girl's voice from a few doors behind us screaming, "No, no, let me go," while a guy yelled, "You can't take her." My partner and I looked at each other and then down the road because we heard someone's engine revving hard. All I saw was headlights coming my way, and I took a flying leap into the cab, across my partner's lap, as she slammed the door shut behind me. I was lucky, because the car came within literally inches of our rig. I would have been crushed if I did not have the reflexes to jump in. As the car went by, we saw that a bald, tatted up Hispanic guy was the driver, and he was just casually flicking a cigarette out the window. In the back seat was a girl in her underwear, desperately pounding on the windows. Meanwhile, the dude on the outside of the car was in his tighty-whities. He had one hand holding onto the roof rack or something, and his feet braced up against the door while he was also punching the window. I flicked on the lights and sirens, hoping to scare the driver, and my partner got on the radio, telling dispatch a brief rundown and to send cops to our location. The driver was not fazed in the least by our display. He stopped at the four-way stop sign, looked at us in his mirror, flicked the cigarette, and took off. We gave chase, maybe against our better judgment. The driver was cruising, weaving this way and that, trying to shake off the guy hanging on in just his underpants. We saw the dude fall off and run after the car, and a moment later, the girl came flying out of the car in a very ungraceful tuck and roll. The two took off on foot behind one of those giant power breakers that you sometimes see on city streets, while the driver floored it around a corner. We followed around the corner ourselves to try to get a plate number, but he had shit covering his plates. Since he was gone, we decided it was safe to get out and do our job and take care of those injured. We hopped out with the aid bag, and my partner kept watch while I ran to the giant power thing, but the nearly naked duo was gone. At that moment, 5 squad cars pulled up, and we gave them the story. They asked where the two were who escaped the car, and we responded that we did not know. They asked for a description and a possible direction, and we told them what we could. Maybe 5 minutes later, one of the cops radioed in, saying that he found them. Here is the thing though. They denied everything. No car, no kidnapping, no chase. They said none of it happened. Of course, they could not explain why they were nearly a block away from their place, wearing only their underwear. They also could not explain their lack of shoes or the large amount of road rash all over them. Since technically, they did not do anything wrong, they had no desire to press charges or be treated by us, and they were let go. Probably the strangest thing you will ever hear from someone working as an EMT. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. The Australian Yowie, Sasquatch Bigfoot thingy, bipedal and humanoid, 3 meters, 10 feet tall with very long arms, shit tons of sightings, including eyewitness accounts. I know people who've seen them, we'll get to that later. People in small parts of Victoria, Southeast Australia, hear primate-like calls every day at dusk and dawn. Love shiny shit. Almost every eyewitness has reported one key factor: the stink. You can always smell them before you see them. Front canine teeth hang out of their mouth. Distinctive overbite. Eyes glow. I know a man, let's call him Mick, in a central town called Guri in NSW. Largely dirt and scrub forest. Population is less than 500 people, who claims to have encountered them at least twice. Once in his early teens, and once a few years ago. He was exploring with a few friends when he was 12 to 15 years old, and they smelt it, shortly followed by hearing its footsteps. It has very wide, flat feet, so its steps are very, very loud. He also claims to have heard trees cracking, which also fits the description, as they are often thought to snap any branches that get in the way when they run, to keep up momentum, sometimes even uprooting small trees. He turned to his friend, but he was gone, so he ran to catch up with him. As they caught up, his friend said that he had seen something, but didn't say much else. Mick told me that he must have seen something, because he was piss scared, and he had never seen anyone run that fast. His friend really never talked about it, and took his own life in his late 30s, not because he saw a yowie. He was a drug addict. Mick's second account was when he was in his 20s. He claims to have found a makeshift campsite in dense bushland. It had a nest/bed made from shredded tarpaulins and foliage, and shattered glass and rocks arranged in intricate patterns on the ground. As for killing it, I don't know. Gun? Grew up in BC, mostly in Victoria, but I've got family all over. Live on the East Coast now. Definitely a lot less weird over here, even though it's got a lot older European remnants. I've experienced a lot of spirit/ghost sensory stuff, even saw one briefly. I know I did not imagine it, because my GF at the time, and a random dude walking behind us, saw it all too. Aside from the visual, the feeling accompanying it was intense. My current GF lived on Vancouver Island for a long time too. She's a lot more sensitive to the supernatural, kind of a witchy hippie type person. She told me a story about an entity spirit that resided in a cave that grabbed her and dragged her into a cave. Not really my story, but I'll do my best. Happened during the deforestation protests, back 15-ish years ago. She's camped out with First Nations and hippie protesters. Guy she met there is a weird spiritual sort of dude. Seems kinda schizo to me, but she claims he can see and communicate with paranormal entities. Dude camps out at this cave that goes deep into the mountain and wants others to stay away. Tells people to never bring weapons near there, under any circumstances. Not safe for them. What the fuck? GF goes to visit him. She always carries a knife on her in her purse, even today. Knife, securely on her belt, comes off and goes flying into the cave. She is scared shitless. Dude is going, no, I said no weapons. Something grabs her by the legs and hauls her off her feet, starts dragging her towards the cave. She can't see anything, but whatever it is, it's far stronger than a human. Buddy starts talking to the entity, assuring it that she's a friend and meant no harm. He vouches for her. Thing lets go after dragging her 6 feet. She apologizes to the entity and dude, then skadoodles. Wakes up the next day with her knife next to her in her tent. Asked dude, and he claimed he never goes into the cave and did not retrieve it for her. It's not really my favorite, but I like it because it's local to me. Can't remember all of the details, word for word neither. Sometime in the 1940s. Young boys hanging out with some friends. They and others see objects flying around the sky. This is during World War II, so they're used to seeing things flying in the sky. But they haven't seen ones like this before. They're kids, so they don't really pay much attention and just do their own thing. Few days later, they're playing in a lane, and one of the crafts either lands or just appears. A's get out, but they aren't all one species. Describes one as a grey, one as like a Bigfoot, and then other assorted ones. There's around 5 of them in total. Friends shit their britches and run off. One of them grabs him, and I'm pretty sure sticks a needle in the back of his neck. Not sure what happens after that, but later that night, / a couple days later, he's looking out his bedroom window and sees a little A, maybe a grey, I'm not sure, loitering around the back gate that leads to the lane. His uncle fucks it over the head with a shovel and kills it. The uncle and a cop put it inside of a coal sack and bury it at the stairs of the church. Week or so later, men in black turn up to the house and give vague threats to him and his family. Doesn't tell the story until the 50s or 60s, which, as far as I know, predates the multiple species sharing aircraft meme. Actually have a greentext related to the church that I'm going to post after this because I'm mental and no one can stop me. I didn't find out about the A thing until later though, which is when I put 2 and 2 together to make what I like the sound of. 16 years old. Live in British Columbia, Canada. Me and a close friend of mine decide to go camping for 4 days during spring break. Meet at my place in the early hours of the morning with all our equipment. Friend is just about 18 and also has his N driver's license. He brings with him his dad's Lee Enfield .308 rifle. I ask my mother if I can take my Israeli Mauser and point .308. Begrudgingly, she says yes, as the bears are starting to wake up and may want a food source. Take all the needed gear, such as a tent, and a few other goodies like MREs, water filters, ammo, etc. Burrow our gear into the back of my older friend's truck and set off. A smooth 1-hour drive out of town takes us to some very forests, which continue right up to the Rockies, if I remember right. Park his car, and load our rucksacks and grab our guns. Both of us are carrying stripper clips and a lot of ammunition, as we also intend to do some target shooting. Hike for a good 7 kilometers before we notice the first weird thing. A large tree, maybe 15 years old, has been broken at the base. What's weird is that it must have been some really big thing, as the base of the tree is the strongest part. No beavers, as the nearest lake is 5 kilometers ahead of us, our camping spot. Not a boulder falling down, as that area of the forest is flat. What the fuck? Shrug it off as a friend teases that it could be Bigfoot. Whatever. Walk another kilometer and have lunch, which consisted of MREs. By around 5 p.m. in the afternoon, we reach our campground. The lake, which was decent in size, however you could see all around it. Old-ass abandoned cabin on the other side. The cabin looks 1900s kind of old. Set up our tent as well as a small shooting range to peg shit with bullets and make our skills razor sharp. Attempt to go swimming, however the water is so fucking cold, as all the snow had melted recently. Decide to walk around the cabin, straight across from us, on the other side of the lake. On the way over, see some big ass fucking footsteps in the mud. That's no bear. We both get a little freaked out by this, and consider moving our tent. We decide not to, after shrugging it off, and remembering we both had high-powered rifles. Keep in mind, his Enfield has 10 .308 rounds in a mag, and my Mauser has 5 of them. We can stop anything dead in its tracks in pretty much one hit. Cabin's door is long since gone. Dust on floor. Another footprint in dust. Fuck this. We leave the cabin immediately and walk back to camp. Inspect camp to make sure nothing has been fucked around with. We are both paranoid now. Decide to do some target shooting around 7 p.m. to maybe ward anything off that is curious. Unload between us a good 25 bullets. Rip to the cans downrange. Come around 8 p.m. and we are getting ready for bed, as the sun has just slipped below the horizon. We both go to sleep, feeling a little better after expelling some rounds from our rifles. Around 11 p.m., I wake up to a normal night. Normal ass forest sounds around me. None of that cliche silent forest bullshit. Everything seems normal. Get out and shine a flashlight around and send a raccoon diving for cover. While scanning over the lake, I see something. Come back to it and see that I am looking at 2 sets of eyes who are looking right back at me. The eyes reflect from the light. I can't see a torso. Immediately wake up my friend. Yell across the lake and say hello. Eyes keep staring. Friend emerges, carrying his weapon and ammo. We start making loud noises to try and ward this thing off. It won't fucking leave. Prop flashlight on rock to face the set of eyes. We both take aim for just below the eyes for a body shot. Boom, boom. Both our rifles explode into life, and we hear a distinct whap noise as they strike home. The noise that followed still haunts me. It was like a roar. We both immediately make follow-up shots. We hear one of our bullets hit a tree, but the other makes the same flop noise before. 3 rounds hit whatever this thing is. Did we just kill Bigfoot? No more noise is heard until 2 a.m. A large snapping noise is heard about 400 meters away behind the cabin. We both fire off 2 more shots into the woods. Nothing else is heard for the rest of the evening. As soon as the sun rises at 6:30 a.m., we pack our shit up. We go across the lake before leaving and inspect the area. Whatever was looking at us was inside the cabin. Go inside, weapons raised. Huge pool of blood, right below the front window. It's dried, so we assume it's no use. Large hole in the wall behind the window. That was the 1 round that missed. We don't go back to see if another tree has fallen. On the hike back, we see a rather large boulder, lying less than 5 feet from us. We hip-fired in its direction. We aren't disturbed again, and make it back to the truck okay. There is a large dent in the right door of the car. Also evidence of something, making a very large attempt at entering the vehicle. Drive home and tell Mom. I have no idea what that thing was. but whatever it was, got some lead in it. I refused to go back to those woods, and refused to go camping in BC alone. Be 10 years old. Go fishing with my brothers. Don't catch anything. Walking back to the car, disappointed. See furry thing on the river, its hind legs in the distance. Assume it's a bear. It crouches down and seems to cup the water in its hands. Looks at us. Shits pants. Run like hell, warn brothers. Go back to the site. Thing is gone.